Is this opening a bunch of exposition? Kinda, but it gets the job done well enough despite that. Sometimes the simplest openers are the best ones you need. After that, we got our first level, and it's just as solid. It gets you right into the thick of it while making sure to teach you the mechanics of the game in a steady pace. Kinda makes the actual tutorial a little pointless, but that's optional to begin with. Speaking of which, this game feels great to play, and it's probably the best thing about it. The movement feels incredibly fluid and responsive in both the platforming with jumping and swinging with your hook shot, and combat as you tear through enemies with melee attacks. I bet speedrunners would have a field day with this game if they haven't already. Our first boss is the Wrecker Tank, and while it isn't anything too special, it's a solid enough first boss. Its attacks are simple, consisting of a spike ball, shots that track your position, and flying into you at full speed. Really easy to avoid, and you just gotta wail on it until it goes down. Short, sweet, and to the point with not much else to say. Guardian Core HQ, our central hub for the whole game. It's not much, but it's a safe place for you and others in between missions. While you're here, you can talk to NPCs, including various ones you rescue out in the field, learn new burst techniques from Nega, buy booster chips that grant you extra perks from the nurse spots, and even change your paint job thanks to Prim here. Said paint jobs also grant you one of the various bosses' abilities, Mega Man style, which can range from extremely useful to not very useful at all, which is also Mega Man style. There's also a training room and archives you can indulge in if you want. Good stuff to do when you got nothing to do. You know, in a world primarily made up of robots with humans not really being a thing, the idea of books being a new innovation is both funny and oddly sensible at the same time. I love a good multifaceted joke. That being said, what do you mean you don't see any computers, Kai? There's 3 of them in this very room, and they're not exactly hidden. Bit of a small thing, I know, but I like the stage select screen. While it's very obvious what it's inspired by, I like how cleanly everything's laid out, and Colonel's rundowns before each stage are quite funny, as he ends each one with a goofy remark about how he's personally affected by the circuit's actions. Gives me a good chuckle. I probably waited a bit long to say this, but Gravity Circuit looks so good. It might seem like yet another indie title that opts for nostalgic pixel style, but that is by no means a handicap. It knows the style it's going for and it runs with it, taking advantage of every pixel to make gorgeous environments and expressive animations on the characters. On top of running incredibly smoothly, the presentation is simply superb. While you can play each level in any order you want, the Steelworks is most likely going to be your first level, and as such, it's pretty alright. It's got some fair enemy placement, and the environmental hazards are easy to understand and get around. It does feel a little overkill in places, like when you gotta slide as fast as you can to avoid the lasers, but it's nothing you can't overcome with some practice. And trust me, practice is one thing you'll be getting in spades. Because rather unfortunately, that's a bit of a problem with Gravity Circuit as a whole. Once you're out of the opening, the difficulty curve for the rest of the game is not nice, especially for newcomers. The game throws a lot at you in most of the stages, and the platforming quickly gets much more advanced than you'd expect, to the point where the hookshot is basically your best friend. It is kinda reminiscent of the old Mega Man games that inspired Gravity Circuit, but even then, those games knew when to rein it in, at least in the good ones. With Gravity Circuit, it's sink or swim by level 1, and while I'm no stranger to harder games, it can definitely cause some whiplash after that fairly mellow opening. In any case, let's talk collectibles, because there's a fair amount in each stage to get. You got 8 bots that need saving, which contribute to getting booster chits, health upgrades in 4 of the stages, burst upgrades in the other 4 stages, and after an update, pallet chits that can be traded in for the aforementioned paint jobs. Also, enemies will drop the occasional data chip for the archives. So there's clear incentive to go after all of these, and while some are guilty of the classic jump down this specific pit even though every other pit kills you trope, most of them aren't too bad to find. Even when you miss one or two, they usually end up in a clever place rather than somewhere completely obscured from your view. Solid job all around. Another small detail I like is that each boss you fight has a very clear personality to them, not just in their intro animation, but also in the brief conversation Kai has with them before and after the fight. Shows both how they feel about Kai and adds an extra layer of tragedy to the situation, since they were once your fellow circuits. Speaking of which, it's time for the first circuit boss fight. Ray, aka the Optic Circuit, aka Mr. I'm a fire in my laser! That's only a half joke, by the way. Dude's got lasers up the wazoo. Diagonal lasers, flying lasers, big reflective lasers, even bigger off lasers, and also a flamethrower and bombs. Needless to say, Ray doesn't pack heat, he is the heat. And if you don't want to get scorched, you just gotta memorize the attack patterns and wail on him when you can. Not easy by any means, but it's more than doable with a little patience. At least more than Ray has anyway. Next level is the Junkyard, and it's decent as well. Plenty of hazards to avoid with spikes and purple goop, and you get to tear through zombie robots like your Robo Frank West. It's also one of the few levels to have its own mini-boss, which is pretty alright all things considered. Again, nothing amazing, but it works well for what it wants to be. Unfortunately, I don't think I can extend the same compliments to Trace, aka the Patch Circuit. Now, there's nothing outright bad about her fight, she just feels the least interesting out of all of them. She's got some projectiles in the form of energy balls, syringes, and potions that create purple goop, and her burst skill of summoning a bunch of trash boxes is kinda neat. However, she doesn't really provide that much of a challenge overall, even when she starts summoning trash bots to her side. And as a result, I barely think back on her fondly, if at all. Might not be the worst fight in the world, but being unmemorable isn't much better. Next up is the Mountains level, and for the most part, it's good. The platforming is certainly tricky with plenty of spikes and enemies to be found, but so long as you're focused and patient with your movement, you can learn to overcome it, at least in a normal run of the stage. Because what I've neglected to mention up until now is a specific challenge tied to each stage that counts towards 100% completion. See, amidst a variety of different challenges, you'll have to complete each stage in a specific way, such as not getting hit by the lasers in the steelworks, avoiding all the speakers in the city center, etc. And they range from not too bad to a nice challenge to call me Walter White because I ripped all my hair out. And wouldn't you know it, not getting frozen in the mountains is that last one. Why? Because almost every damn enemy in this level fires ice projectiles that freeze you on contact, and the ones that don't are hidden in the walls and ceiling and spray freezing gas. That's already bad enough, but the worst part is you can't just reload a checkpoint if you mess up. If you get frozen even once at any point in the whole level, you gotta restart the whole level in order for it to qualify. Why? It's already bad enough that I had to basically tiptoe around dozens of enemies and systematically take out each one, including this one near the end that I swear was placed there just to troll you, but restarting the whole level again over one slip-up is some Celeste tier bullshit. And I would know. Trust me, I know. Well, is Blade, aka the Cooler Circuit, any better? I would say so. True to his name, he's got ice projectiles that he uses in a variety of different ways, and he can fly straight at you, create ice blocks, and fly around in a massive ice tornado. Not the most challenging thing in the world, assuming you aren't overly careless, but it at least ends the level in an ice way.
You know, I figured you'd make an ice pun at some point. Just didn't expect your first to be so freezy.
Oh, don't be so cold. That one was cool.
And now the joke's been melted. Should have had this one put on ice.
Hey, I'm not giving my audience the cold shoulder. They love an ice pun.
Better not slip up now. They're frozen in their seats.
Good. The best jokes give them shivers.
I won't snow any further than this.
Now that's a cold reception. Anyways, the power plant is next, and it's also pretty decent. Some hazards like the lasers make it feel a little bit like a retread of the steelworks, but the addition of electrified floors that turn on and off when hit with an electric projectile makes them unique in their own right. Gotta be quick on your feet and your swings in some areas, but it's fitting considering what we're dealing with. And ending it is Cable, aka the Power Circuit, aka Mr. Electricity. He's quick on his feet and will be firing electric projectiles in all sorts of patterns, as well as activating lasers one at a time and all in rows. Plus the floor is one of those electrifiable ones, so you'll be jumping as much as he is. Really makes for a nice rush of adrenaline, so long as you don't get too ahead of yourself and swing wildly. Watch where you walk or else you get shocked and all that. Our next level is the highway, and this is my kind of level. You're jumping between vehicles as they're moving fast down the highway, and you feel like a grade A badass doing so, especially when you're tearing through enemies and dodging the signs along the way. Sure, the helicopter mini-bosses aren't anything special, and the missile dodging sequences can be a little awkward, but it's still an overall exciting and fun level to play. And to keep up the pace all the way to the end is Bit, aka the Shift Circuit. That's right, Gravity Circuit has its own quick man, only he doesn't need a boomerang and you don't get a time stopper. Well, he's got some flair with his wave projectiles. Being the speedster he is, his main attack is dashing, and a whole lot of dashing. And I respect the hustle. Really, there's nothing to complain about this guy. He's just fun both as a boss and as a character. I almost feel bad for having to kill him, honestly. Next up is the city center, and surprisingly, this might be my favorite level in the game. Yeah, over the highway, no less. It's extremely colorful, has some challenging hazards with the speakers, spikes, and platforms that rage when you walk on them, and the music is quite a bop. Yeah, it should be expected given the musical aesthetic, but even expected greatness is worthy of great praise. And giving us a show-stopping ending is Medley, aka the Wave Circuit. She's my favorite of the main 8 circuits, honestly. Her whole fight just oozes personality. From her starting up on stage with the crowd cheering her on, to her stylish moves as she attacks, to the big screen flashing KO when she loses. The attacks themselves are fun too, consisting of music notes, summoning speakers, sound waves, shockwaves when she jumps, and pulling a Crash Bandicoot. It's just a fun, stylish fight. I don't know what else I can say. Now we're in the ore mines, and this one feels like a Mega Man X level. I mean that in a good way for the record. You'll be navigating crumbling platforms and tearing through breakable blocks and walls and on conveyor belts, and there are even moments where you get to ride in a drill mech. It is a bit clunky at times, especially if you're going for the trophy that involves not breaking it, but it's still pretty fun nonetheless. Solid music too, pun not intended. And equally solid is the Break Circuit, aka Crash, but not the Bandicoot. He's a gentle giant normally, but not in this fight, as he'll drill dash, jump, and cause blocks to fall, shoot his drill like a hook shot, and drill into the ceiling to rain down more blocks and bigger breakable blocks that you'll have to quickly smash through or else you'll get crushed. Quite a hectic fight, but it's easier than it looks, especially if you pay attention to your surroundings. Kind of a shame we have to put this big guy down, but there's too much at stake not to, unfortunately. Our final circuit level is the warehouse area. For like 30 seconds, then it becomes cyberspace, and truly unique. You got platforms that appear when you get close enough to them, digital portals that make for interesting sections, switch puzzles that kind of make you think, and a crossroads portion with 4 rooms, which is just as fun, though I definitely could have done without the upside down room. And of course, it's a visual treat all the way through. Pretty good as the last circuit level. But I do take issue with one aspect of it. Like the other levels, cyberspace has its own challenge, this one being punching Hash, aka the Cypher Circuit, for laughing at your misfortune. But doing this isn't as easy as you'd think. At various points, Hash can spawn in and laugh at you after you fall down a pit or take damage from spikes, but he isn't guaranteed to do so very often. What's more, the moment you respawn and are able to hit him, he teleports away, and no matter what you do, you will never hit him. So how do you complete the challenge then? Why, by waiting until Hash's boss fight and smacking him when he happens to laugh at you, of course. Yeah, that's right. Every other level has a challenge you have to complete during the level portion, but this is the only one that's different. Why? I don't know. Ask this cocky prick after you cave his face in due to all the frustration you likely had trying to hit him during the level. Well, to give him a little credit, Hash does put up a good fight. He mainly teleports around and creates holographic clones, and in between each moment he'll shoot projectiles, create spinning projectiles, and spawn rows of spikes on 1 to 2 platforms, and even most of the arena. Surprisingly simple for a technological character, but he puts it all to good use in the fight. Now that's a legitimately creepy moment. We had some mild foreshadowing that something was wrong with Colonel beforehand, but that doesn't make the eventual reveal any less shocking and unsettling. Even in a 2D action platformer, indie games can't help but get in that one creepy moment. Time for the final stretch of the main game, starting with the Arc entrance. This is where things start getting really tricky, but if you made it this far, you've likely adapted to what the game has thrown at you so far. It incorporates elements of some of the previous stages like the mech, lasers, and electrified floors, and they're laid out in a way that makes them unique from those levels and a bit more challenging too. Not the most memorable thing ever, but it serves its purpose well as the beginning of the end. There's a twist for you. Nega is the original Gravity Circuit, or rather, one of its previous hosts. Turns out the Gravity Circuit we've been playing as this whole time, Kai, was just a normal bot a long time ago. But when Nega's body shut down after the last battle with the Virus Army, the Gravity Circuit attached itself to Kai, making him the new Gravity Circuit. Since then, he's wandered aimlessly for decades without memories, and Nega remained in stasis as well, with both only regaining consciousness after the Virus Army reappeared. Might seem a bit out of nowhere, but considering Kai admitted he had no memories, and Nega was always a bit mysterious, it works really well as a third act gut punch. It especially makes Nega a really compelling character. And to ensure Kai has what it takes to defeat the Virus Army leader, Nega challenges you to an all-out duel, and it's an amazing battle of equals. Everything you can do, he can do too, from melee attacks to slides to the hook shot to his own booster chips. He'll even grab blocks out of the ground and throw them at you. Tricky stuff, but once you lock in and memorize his attacks, you'll prove yourself the superior. Never mind, he's got his own burst skills too. Catch, interrupt, flying strike, and last resort, just to throw you off guard. Such an incredible fight that is easily my favorite in the game. Nega truly earned his place as one of my favorite rivals in gaming with a kick-ass boss theme to boot. Well done, Gravity Circuits. Well done. Next level is the Arc Machinery, and it's literally just the steelworks again. I'm not joking, all the hazards to the enemies, to the platforming, to even the basic aesthetic are all reused from the steelworks. In fact, outside of the purple goop from the junkyard and the conveyor belts from the ore mines, which add nothing, I don't think any elements from any other level are incorporated here, not even any later enemies. I don't want to say this feels lazy, but when it's literally just a harder version of an already existing level, it's hard not to feel that way. At least the Circuit Crystal boss is pretty good. It's this game's equivalent to Mega Man's usual boss rush, with a bit of a twist. Not only do you fight a weaker version of every circuit, but the crystal will copy and use one of every boss's attacks on you before you fight said boss. It also starts the fight with its own projectiles. It's a simple change, but a welcome one, as simply doing a standard boss rush, while harmless, likely would have been too easy. This puts a nice spin on things. The Arc Depths, the last level in the game, and it sends it off with a bang. While its aesthetic borrows a lot from the Junkyard, the challenge it provides is perfect for a final level. There are 4 sections consisting of 4 crossroads where you tackle one side of the room to hit a switch, while Nega handles the other, and each side is unique from the other, consisting of several elements from all the previous levels, which makes this one stage incredibly replayable. The bottom of the depths isn't much to write home about, but the rest of the level is great enough to warrant a win. Yup, this game ain't done with the twist yet. There were 10 circuits all along, and rather than being heroes, their true purpose was much more sinister. At the behest of their masters, the circuits were designed to terraform planets all across the universe. But after many millennia of doing so, the other 9 had enough of it and betrayed Commander Circuit, burying him and the Ark so they could care for the bots of this planet. Unfortunately for them, Commander was able to bide his time, rebuild the virus army, and eventually overtake 8 of the circuits to resume his mission as revenge for being betrayed. He couldn't find Gravity Circuit due to his own predicament, but now he's here to finally lead the planet and continue his mission. I don't really know what I was expecting for the final boss, but this one manages to deliver another gut punch that manages to be both shocking and sensible with the lore. Good job. Unfortunately, to get to Commander, we gotta go through Colonel, the saddest yet lamest boss in the game. Sure, it's not bad, it works for what it is, and it's nice that they actually made Colonel a victim of the true villain rather than the villain all along, like a certain other Mega Man game. However, every attack of his, from punching to spinning to grabbing to slamming shockwaves, is super easy to avoid, and while the occasional barriers in the arena getting smaller halfway through do make things a little more interesting, it pales in comparison to every boss fight beforehand. At least you can get a trophy for not getting grabbed by him, but that's not enough to salvage it. Luckily, Commander Circuit comes in swinging with a proper final boss. Literally, he summons 2 giant hands to slap you, and there's a trophy for not getting crushed by them too. Beyond that though, he's got lasers that spawn geysers, multiple projectiles from his eyes, spread shot bombs, and can push you back by roaring. A third of the way through, he'll even double up on most of these attacks while adding additional defenses that make it harder to deal damage to him. Once you get through that hectic third, however, Commander loses his hands and starts summoning every enemy to his side that he can, along with firing more shots and lasers as a last-ditch effort to keep you back. But with enough punches, burst skills, and good old-fashioned throwing, you'll overcome the odds and turn Commander Circuit into scrap. I wouldn't say this is the best fight in the game, in fact it's not too tough if you know what you're doing, but it's a solid capper to a solid story and a solid game. Man, Nega's such a good character. Completely selfless and heroic, yet with such tragedy surrounding him. He really is the best part of Gravity Circuit's story. And hey, after the credits roll, assuming you've gotten everything, you get a glimpse of his new form as the new Commander Circuit. I don't know what the future holds in store for any of them, but I hope it's something good, because they deserve it. Time for post-game cleanup. First up is the Combat Memory Bank, where you can refight all the previous bosses, both individually and a gauntlet, whether that's in order or shuffled around. While I don't really get the shuffled gauntlet since it seems to end with the final boss regardless of what order you get, it's nice to have the option to refight the bosses without going through the stages again. And by fighting 13 of them individually or completing one of the gauntlets, you get rewarded the best pallet chip in the game, the Ultimate Blend, which gives you the power of every pallet chip in the game combined. A very good reward for doing so, and an absolute godsend for any extra cleanup you have to do. There's also several miscellaneous challenges you'll need to complete for trophies, and amongst them includes the Objective Survive trophy that requires you to defeat any boss after they use their burst skill 10 times. Sounds simple, right? Well, it is until you actually attempt it. Not only do you need to mentally keep track of every time the burst skill goes off, but you also have to make sure to take as little damage as possible during the boss, as well as deal significant enough damage to the boss, that way you can kill them the moment the 10th burst skill goes off. You can't do too much, otherwise you risk killing them before the required amount, and you can't do too little, otherwise you'll likely die trying to catch up, unless you're extremely lucky or just cracked. Personally, I got this trophy from the Break Circuit, and while it was the easiest one I could consistently survive, my fingers were shaking like crazy by the time I actually pulled it off. And that was just my successful attempt, because believe you me, you're gonna die a lot in your attempts to pull this one off. And I'm not done sending challenges yet, because there are 3 that involve not taking damage in certain aspects. Not taking damage from stage hazards? Easy, just pay attention to your jumping and be patient. Not taking damage from any boss? A bit difficult, but once you nail down the patterns, it's not so bad. Not taking damage during an entire stage? That one sucks for very obvious reasons. I've already mentioned that Gravity Circuit is quite a challenging game, so going through any one of these levels and the boss without getting hit by anything is an exercise in agony. Thankfully, you can do this in the intro stage, which is the easiest way to do it, but even then, during my attempts, I would constantly screw up due to the dumbest mistakes. I could run through the whole stage flawlessly without getting hit, but because I accidentally stood too close to the boss or missed time to jump or attack, I fail and have to start the whole level all over again. Seriously, if you think I'm exaggerating, play this game and go for this trophy yourself. You will understand me perfectly by the time you're done. At least the remaining 2 playthroughs to finish off completion are pretty good. There's a pretty standard New Game Plus trophy that's no different from most games, and there's a unique Circuit Mode playthrough that blocks your burst energy to only 2 containers and allows you to use your health to execute burst skills once you're out of burst energy. Might not seem like much, but it changes up the dynamic of the game in practice, especially since all the burst upgrades get replaced with health upgrades instead. I also decided to use this run to knock out the trophies for not getting any health or burst upgrades, or any extra burst skills or booster chits other than the ones you're given automatically at the start. And this all made for a rather unique challenge compared to the normal game. Granted, it wasn't too taxing since you could do this on easy, but I'm glad there was something fresh to do in a second or third required playthrough for 100%. Definitely better than the boring slog that was Silent Hill F. Gravity Circuit is a rather unique indie title. It's a love letter to Mega Man that also provides a unique experience that allows it to stand on its own, and I commend the devs for that accomplishment. It's not one of my favorite indie games ever or anything, hell I wouldn't even say it's all that great outside of the stuff with Nega, but it is a really solid, well-made game that oozes with passion and love, which I will always respect. Plus, since we haven't gotten anything new from Mega Man in ages, and still won't for another year, Gravity Circuit is the perfect spiritual successor to keep us happy until that day comes. So if you're a Mega Man fan, or even just a fan of 2D action platformers, this game might just be for you, so long as you can adapt to the pretty tough difficulty curve. As for next time, I'll be hard at work on the next era, which I hinted at through this Fox image, which also has not been correctly guessed. I don't know if my hints were that well hidden, but I could be surprised with a last minute correct guess. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed what I presented you today, and if you did, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and share it around if you can. See you next time, everybody!